it's hectic. It's hectic. We experimented with HelloFresh here in Australia. Have you ever used HelloFresh?
No, I've seen it advertised. That's like a meal service.
Well, it's well, let me tell you what it is. Okay,
Yeah.
they give you a recipe, and then they give you the ingredients to go into that recipe.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, for example, yesterday we had chicken hamburgers. Okay, so you get sealed fresh chicken, and then you've got to forget what you call it, but you've got to cut it through the middle sideways, horizontal.
Yeah.
And you get two burgers that way, and then they give you all the stuff to all the sauces to put on it, and then they give you a salad and a recipe to put certain sauces on the salad. So then you got the salad and you got the chicken burger, and they give you the bun too. And, so they give you everything that you need, other than what they call pantry items, which is salt and pepper, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. But we've stopped it now. We've said no more, because some of the sauces, they don't tell you what the ingredients of the sauces. They'll give it a title. They'll say vinegar or balsamic vinegar or something like that. But then there are other things in it, and they started having an effect on me, because I'm very sensitive to that. And then they use capsium a lot, and my wife is allergic to capsium. So
it's quite a strong vegetable, isn't it?
Yeah, I enjoy it, and I eat it when I can, but we don't usually buy it because can't share it. So HelloFresh, I think it's a good concept, but we've cancelled it now. I've learned a lot about simple things on how to really flavor rice, for example, and
okay.
Yeah, so I've learned from it. We've had it for, I think, 3 weeks, and we order it for 2 people, and then what we found we could do was, because they give you so much, okay, for a meal, that we easily, because we don't eat a great volume at our meals, Sue and I, that we could make that last easily for 2 days. So that's 4 meals out of the 2 that they sent us.
A lot of restaurants are like that these days. Like on Sunday, we had lunch. My brother, our younger brother, and his wife, it was her birthday.
Yeah.
And 2 of my kids and their family, we caught up for lunch. It was at the local RSL club.
Yeah.
And the meals were just huge. Like, they were just huge. I mean, I couldn't eat it. Like, it was just way too much food. I mean, it was well priced and everything, but just the same, I just thought, well, there's so much waste here, because, and they said, oh, did you want to take it home with you? And I said, well, no. No. But it was just, and for that reason, I think I didn't probably enjoy it as much as I probably would have done if it was a smaller portion, But anyway.
Yeah. Now the portions worked out well, because we can hold over half of the meal for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then there's no prepping other than possibly warming or something, and that. So it worked out well. There's another one in Australia now. HelloFresh is across the world, but there's another one that's only Australian, and and we looked at that, you know, as an alternative to HelloFresh, and then we thought, you know, it's just probably it's although the HelloFresh, excuse me, HelloFresh is not expensive, okay. When you can multiply it, make 2 meals 4 meals, okay.
Yeah.
And you know, the 2 meals, I don't know, what do they cost? I think the 3 that arrive in a week are about $60. That's 3 meals. So that's $20 a meal, and we take it and multiply it to 4 meals out of it. So it's like $10 a meal, okay. And so it price-wise, it's all right. And it's probably what we spend when we buy ingredients and put them in the fridge and deep freeze for ourselves to eat. So that's why we thought it would be good for us. But anyway, it's not. How do you go about your food by yourself? I mean, obviously you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah, well, I always have a good breakfast, and that's normally, you know, fresh fruits and yogurt. I make my own yogurt now.
Okay.
And you know, walnuts and honey and that sort of thing. So it's quite a hearty breakfast in that sense. All fresh plant-based stuff, except for the honey, of course.
Yeah.
And the yogurt, it's I've got a yogurt maker, so I just use this sort of like mix, and it makes about a litre at a time.
So do you buy a mix?
Yeah, at the moment, yeah.
Yeah.
For lunch, so it could be just as simple as a sandwich or something like that.
Yeah.
And the evening meal just sort of depends how I feel. But I normally just sort of eat like, you know, pasta or, you know, rice dishes or something like that, steamed vegetables. Yeah.
Right.
You
That's
know,
in the evening. That's in the evening.
Yeah. But I don't like to have big meals in the evening. I just, you know, the biggest meal I eat is breakfast. And I normally have a morning tea as well.
Okay. What would that be? What food would they be involved?
I normally just have a cup of rooibos tea and something like a piece of like, it's just convenience, but like individually wrapped piece of like carrot cake and carrot and walnut cake or banana bread or something like that. So.
Right. And then do you snack at all?
No.
Not. I'm a bugger for snacking.
Yeah, I used to a lot, especially when I was working. I think it was partly comfort food, but I used to eat potato chips and stuff like that. But I don't now. I've sort of cut all that out. So.
Yeah, what I find handy is you buy these baby carrots, fresh.
Yeah, they're nice, aren't they? Yeah.
Lovely, you know. So when I want a snack, I usually go and eat one of those.
Yeah.
And that it works well through the day. In the evening, though, when we're watching a movie, then it doesn't suffice. That's when I become naughty. Yeah.
But they're quite sweet, aren't they? You know, about the size of the finger. You know. So,
yeah, that's the size of your finger. Yeah. Absolutely. And you can eat the whole thing. You know, you don't have to cut off the end or anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's handy. Then the other thing I snack on, I cook potatoes, and then I put them in the fridge overnight. That turns them into resistant starch, or turns the starch into resistant starch.
Yeah.
And then there are all sorts of ways that you can eat them by themselves, or you can put a bit of mayo with them, or any type of healthy sauce. And that if I'm feeling hungry, that works well.
I quite enjoy, not that I eat a lot of them, but I quite enjoy the little rice crackers with seaweed on them.
Oh, yes.
They're quite tasty. I don't think there's anything to them, but yeah,
No,
they're quite tasty though. Yeah.
I've got rice crackers too. I've got them in the cupboard always, and probably every third or fourth day I find myself taking a rice cracker out, and I don't get the flavored rice cracker. I just get the salted rice cracker.
Okay, yeah, I like the ones with seaweed on them. Yeah.
Okay. Have they got the seaweed mixed in?
Yeah, it's got seaweed on the on the coating of the cracker. Yeah.
Oh, I see. I haven't seen those. Okay. I haven't searched them. Because a packet of it lasts me probably 2 months. Okay.
Okay.
So I tend to, when I do have it, I put a spread on of some description. Might be cottage cheese, or peanut butter. My favorite, one of mine, pure peanut butter, that is. And some sort of spread like that.
So I get the impression you've sort of not strictly vegan anymore, or is that just because
I've never been vegan? Okay. Maybe for a couple of months, a couple of years ago, but I was always plant-based eating.
Yeah.
Okay? So as you know, the definition of plant-based is that you dominantly eat plants. Okay, predominantly, but that doesn't cut out any sort of meat. Okay.
Okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Whereas obviously vegan does. And then there's also vegetarian, which is also vegan, but you can add the dairy. Okay. So, but we just work ourselves, through a process. We will occasionally, over in a month, we might once have chicken. Okay. Probably never have beef. Okay. But we certainly have fish maybe once a week.
Yeah.
So, but then the rest, all our meals and things are, breakfast. I make what I call a savory breakfast, which is predominantly I pressure cook a whole lot of ingredients, but basically with beans. Okay, black beans, and then I make a stew of all the ingredients. There are probably about 30 ingredients in there, in that stew, and then I freeze it. And I freeze it in little muffin cupcake things. So each morning I just take one out and leave it in the fridge overnight, and then it defrosts itself. And then I might have that on sourdough. I might just have it by itself. Okay.
So it's like a savory, is it?
Yeah. It's a very savory. Yeah. And works well. And I may alternate that from one day to another with sauerkraut. I have a mixture which I've told you before. It's sauerkraut with fresh garlic, olive oil, and tahini, and then I mix all that together, and that is often my breakfast. More often than not, actually, it's probably that combination.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So I sort of believe in diversity. Get as much diversity in a week that you possibly can. And,
well, that makes sense, because I think your body becomes conditioned if you eat the same stuff all the time, doesn't it? So.
It does definitely. And there's certain aspects of your body that just deteriorate without you knowing. Okay. So it's my philosophy. I don't write about and I don't research health anymore, because I'm quite comfortable with my health, and I don't think the type of diversity or diverse ingredients that I eat sort of covers all categories and all subcategories as well.
Yeah.
And so I'm quite happy now. I just leave that. So I don't spend my time researching health anymore, as I did for years, as you know. And still
you look quite well.
Yeah.
You look quite well.
Thanks. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love your beard. You look like a grandpa.
I am.
I know you are. Yeah. So and I started. I got married with a beard back in my early 20s, and but my Sue doesn't like beards. Okay, so
This is my first one. I've never grown a beard before.
oh, haven't you?
No, if I can't get past the first week, I'd find it really itchy.
Yeah.
But I don't know, for some reason I managed to get past the first week. So
It really, really suits you, Don. And it's also the same color as your hair. Okay.
yeah.
Now that's fortunate. Okay, mine isn't. I've got patches of white and much darker. So it doesn't look great. But we'll see how the universe moves forward.
That's right. Change is as good as a holiday, eh?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I say that to Sue. I was going to grow a beard for a few months. No, you mustn't. No, I can't stand beards. Okay. I want to kiss you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Takes a bit of commitment to it, though.
Yeah. Yeah. But so does shaving every morning.
Yeah, well, that's true, too. That's very true. Yeah.
I shave with a blade, not an electric shaver or anything.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I used to do that, too. But,
yeah.
In the cold of winter, it's not a very pleasant task.
Yeah. Now, do you trim your beard with scissors or something like that?
No, I haven't as yet. No, when I have my next haircut, I might get them to trim it up for me. But,
okay.
yeah, no, it's just growing wild at the moment. So.
Yeah, that's great. So, what have you been up to?
I've been trying to spend a bit of time in the workshop, starting on some projects and that, but it's been so hot here as well. The humidity has just been horrendous. Like like the other day there, it was like I think 34 degrees.
Yeah, that's horrible, man. We're 38 at the moment.
Yeah, well, but the humidity makes it feel like 40. Like there's just, you walk outside and you just break out into a sweat instantly, sort of thing. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been, and then you get a storm will come through, but it doesn't cool it down. It just makes it worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it's been pretty extreme weather. Again, but I mean, it's hard to be objective, I guess. But I just have this distinct impression that the weather it's becoming more extreme. Like summers are like really hot, or like cyclones buzzing around, or really severe storms or whatever. But yeah, and I guess look overseas and even in Australia now with all the bushfires and stuff like that. So
yeah, LA is certainly having it.
Yeah, there's a physicist she's German that I follow on YouTube, and she talks about climate data and stuff like that, mainly from a European perspective.
Yeah.
And she was saying there earlier in the week that that the latest climate data figures that have come in have said that there's this big current which sort of must be like through the Atlantic Ocean or something. So it sort of goes down toward the equator and goes back up to like the North Pole area.
Yeah.
And the latest data is saying that that sort of flow of water is slowing, and they think it might actually stop. And if that's the case, then there's a high likelihood that in the northern parts of Europe that they'll experience like ice age conditions again, because the moderator of the temperature has tended to be these ocean flows from the equator back up into that northern part. But there's, she's sort of saying the latest data is sort of suggesting that that the current looks like it's on the verge of collapse. So,
wow, I haven't heard of that. That's be interesting. What I keep an eye on the sort of, and that's changing now. Always has been, throughout our lifetime, but it's more now is the magnetic north and magnetic south. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hadn't really given much thought to, like, the currents in the ocean. I just assumed, well, it's to do with the rotation of the Earth and blah, blah, blah. I really didn't give it much thought at all.
Yeah.
But I think there must be a bit more to it. And she seems to say that, like with the, the temperatures because of all of the carbon and going into the atmosphere and so on. But she seems quite balanced. That's one of the reasons I follow her. She's not like an alarmist.
Yeah.
But she just sort of says, this latest data that's been coming in is quite worrying because, she says, like, over long periods of time, these things go through cycles anyway, but she seems to indicate that the cycle based on historical data is sort of collapsing. So, but I mean, I don't know. They're all just predictions, aren't they? It's like trying to predict the weather, I guess. But
no, I think there's. I mean, does she talk about the magnetic north and the magnetic south?
Yeah. So it's quite a holistic approach, and I think because she's a physicist, she likes to like get into the numbers. It's not just read the headlines and then make a prediction. So.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the numbers too. What I've read quite a lot recently about how the magnetic north has moved away from true north and has for a long time, but
it's been drifting quite steadily, hasn't
it? Yeah, it drifts away, but doesn't drift back again. Okay, it drifts away, and now it's moving by like. If you talk about a map, it's like a centimeter on the map a year now. Okay, and which is the fastest it's been certainly in our lifetime.
Because I think the magnetic field, isn't that kind of related to the core of the planet? Because of the nature of the core or something. So.
Yeah, it is. But it also has to do with the stratosphere where it protects the Earth from the sun's harmful rays and so on.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of one of the things that keeps the atmosphere in place, I think, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. So what happens now is historically, the North and South have exchanged places. Okay. And that's the ultimate. That's where this is heading. Probably not in your grandchildren's time, I would imagine, but they don't know because it can suddenly speed up. But it will swap over again, and that, as you can imagine, causes all sorts of issues. Okay.
Well, especially with the amount of technology up there in the atmosphere these days, I'd assume that a lot of that stuff would be GPS based or something. So,
for the facts and figures, but the consequences of, in a sense, the Earth turning upside down. It has consequences for humans, for climate, for seas, for all sorts of things that.
And I think that was sort of part of her message too when she was talking about the ocean currents. She's sort of saying that the certain sort of animals and plants and that if there was a temperature change, I think she was sort of said that the prediction was it could be like up to like 6 degrees or around that sort of number.
Yeah.
And she said that would be a high enough number to change the climate at a local level, and therefore lots of plants which are sort of conditioned to sort of certain temperature ranges wouldn't be able to survive with a change of that magnitude. So.
Yeah, and that 6 degrees would put a lot more water in the oceans. Okay. And that would then, I've looked at predictions of 2% and 4% by some scientists that did this, and 4% is quite hectic, but 6%, there'd be sort of total seaside cities disappearing.
Yeah, and she was sort of saying, even though her focus, as I said, is on Europe, she was sort of saying like countries like Australia would just all of a sudden, go from largely arid countries to receiving incredibly high rates of rainfall, and so.
Yeah, would change. Yeah, talking about cities going underwater. I watched a talk. It doesn't matter who it was because it doesn't come to mind. Oh, wait a minute! I think it was Musk putting out some thoughts, because I tend to watch quite a lot of Musk, but to find which is Musk and which is somebody pretending to be Musk is another issue. But he was talking about something that really made sense to me, and that is, in the future, because of various changes happening on Earth, it would be most suitable to build cities on the seas, floating cities. Okay. And I thought about that, and I listened to what they were saying, and it really was interesting. And and of course, I suppose one of the less important aspects is desalination. Now, here in Australia, there's a lot of desalination, especially on the west coast. I shouldn't think you probably get enough rain over there to keep dams of fresh water. But in the west coast, we do a lot of desalination.
Yeah, I think as you say, it's those sort of things. People just need to have the vision to go and do it, I guess, don't they? But I sort of get the impression, not that I sort of follow him much, but that Musk is sort of more intent on getting onto Mars, isn't he? By the looks of it. So.
Oh no, definitely. I know, but he does a lot here on Earth. He's moved his old enterprise from California to Texas. Okay. And before that, before the elections, long before, years before. Okay. And he now does a lot of his launches, not all of them, but a lot of his launches from Texas. And he's and the area that he's chosen is like desolate. Okay. That any towns there have just got about a dozen houses in them. Okay. And he's now planned how he's going to build a absolute modern city for all his workers as a starter. Okay. But then for other people, using modern transport methods, which he's designed and he's got in practice, and so that looks like, now it would be interesting to watch that unfold, is how the houses he's built. He said they won't need to ever bring electricity into the area. Okay. Everything will be generated either by wind or sun and other means. There are other means too. So that I find very interesting, and watching the videos of how the thing's evolving, and
There's certainly some interesting technologies coming in, and I think out of China too. Like there's some incredible technologies seem to be coming out of there. I see they launched their own AI out of there too. You know, so
yeah, that's they did that on the 20th of January.
I went to have a look at it, but I couldn't get onto it. They had all these warnings up saying, you know, the volume of sign-ups is whatever is so high that it's crashing the system or something. So
Okay, yeah, no, what they've done, they've just sort of emerged with AI to a degree that is, I guess, leading the world now. Okay, and of course they've moved it into space as well. So I find that very interesting, the way they've. But you know, with Trump now in America, and you know, Trump has launched Stargate. You know, with 3 really big guys. Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you read about or watch a video about what Stargate's going to be like, it's amazing. Absolutely.
The thing is too, like historically, I guess, particularly with the US, is when they get themselves into a race with other countries, whether it's Russia or in this case it'll be China, you know, the advances in some of the technology is just huge, you know, because they'll see the Chinese AI as a military threat, of course.
But also talking about threats, you know, the Ukraine-Russia situation, we've sort of mentioned it from time to time in our conversations, but what's happened now is, you might be aware of this, but Canada has developed the most remarkable, what to call it. Let's just call it a gun for now, okay? And they've been promising the Ukraine access to this, but the years have come and gone, and they haven't given it to them because they were waiting for Trump to become president and to back that, okay? And now they're getting it off to the Ukraine, and apparently that Russia hasn't got a hope in hell to combat this particular destroyer device of seen a picture of it. It doesn't look like anything fancy, but apparently what it does is can't be stopped. Okay, so I'm not sure now if things are going to turn, and because of that, whether Putin will, you know, come to some agreement about settling the issues or not. But yeah, I guess the tougher you are, the more you get listened to.
Yeah, but I think the other thing too is that it's, I don't know, my sense of it is it seems to be quite complex because, you know, there's some pretty strong partnerships now, obviously between Russia and China and Korea, you know, so it's just interesting to see how those relationships might play out too. I mean, who knows? So
yeah. Japan's entered it as well. Has promised Russia any sites that they want to set up military. You know, that's right up the backside of Russia.
Yeah.
So that looks interesting. Yeah. North Korea seems to come to light as well.
Yeah, well, that's right. You know, so and they've all got pretty nasty weapons there. So
yeah, they have, and you know, South Korea. Yeah, it's another issue, another conversation, because the Chinese can very easily, and they're roaming around there all over the place, in the sea, in the air, and I mean, all China's got to do is sneeze, and that will fall back into China's territory. But you could say the same about the Panama Canal and other places that Trump's been talking about.
Yeah, well, whether you love him or hate him, he's extremely active, isn't he? Like the number of decisions that he's making and orders that he's issuing is just phenomenal. So.
Yeah. And I think it makes the American people feel good. Okay, they've got a strong leader, and the first things he's done a lot of first things, but the sort of one that gets the most highlight is get rid of the illegal immigrants. Okay. Now nobody can disagree with that. And so they're all pleased, and
well, that was one of the core platforms on which he got elected, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah,
was border control. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, and it's so logical. I don't know, I suppose, the Democrats, of course, are the black hats, and they wanted their country overrun with disturbances, and so we'll see how that transpires, because we're now, having the white hats build America again. Yeah.
Interesting times, that's for sure.
Yeah, and then he's talking about the land to the north. Okay, the name just slips me now.
Well, Greenland or
and
yeah.
That's it. It's interesting. I watched a video recently on the history of the Panama area, and I had no idea. It was so enlightening. Going back, I don't know, 200-300 years. Okay, and seeing how everything evolved. Okay. And
because its strategic importance is more about shipping, I think, isn't it?
100%. It's really only the shipping. It cuts down the distance that people have to go from east to west dramatically. Okay, but I mean, there have been various attempts to build that canal before it actually happened, and and they were really large, thousands and thousands and thousands of people killed in the building of that.
Okay.
And a lot of them died not only from landscapes, but from yellow fever, I think it was, and various other plagues that took place. So it really quite hectic, and then it would lie still. It wouldn't continue for, I don't know, 100 years or 50 years, and then somebody else would pick up the challenge and go. And so there are a number of nations involved, and finally, America took the cudgel and completed it. Okay, based on a theory from somebody from Europe on how to use the lake that was on the top of the mountain, let's say it, and how to use gates to carry them up and down. So it works. But a comment in passing that Trump made, I'm going to say everything, all his comments have been in the last week, but if Panama doesn't come to fruition, we'll just go in there and take it. And the reason he can say that, he said it's probably the best thing, the way to do it, because the Panama don't have an army.
Okay.
They have a single weapon. Okay.
Yeah.
So he would literally just walk in. But at the moment, the people who have walked in has been China.
Yeah.
It is just chock-a-block full of Chinese companies. Okay. And of course, the Chinese companies are the Communist Party that are just fronting with these companies.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really into some interesting times, and of course, I guess we're interesting times in Australia too. Huh? I don't know when the elections are going to be.
I think they're talking about April or May or something, aren't they?
Yeah, they've been talking about it, but nobody has said anything that sort of confirmed that. And
there certainly seems to be a broader mood shift towards conservative politics.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. And, the coalition are using certain strategies that Trump used.
yeah, blatantly, aren't they? Yeah.
Yes. And they worked there. I guess they would work here. And so it would be interesting to see. They seem to be in the lead at the moment of polls, but you really can't go with polls.
No, well, the other thing I guess I've noticed, like in the last, I don't know, 20 years, I suppose, is that, in the lead up to elections, like the political parties would go to great lengths to release, policy statements, and that'd cost them, and they'd have all these detailed plans and everything.
Right.
Whereas these days, it's just like,
Yeah.
This is what we're going to do,
Yeah.
Like the whole, nuclear power thing, Oh, what's the business case? I don't worry about that,
Yeah, the nuclear power. It's advanced tremendously since Chernobyl.
I think one of the challenges with politics these days is the influence of large corporations has probably never been so high. That may not be an accurate statement, but my impression is the influence of these huge multinational companies is at an all-time high level compared to historically, I think. So
yeah, I'd agree with it. Yeah.
And the difference, I guess, is that the wealthiest of these companies, they all tend to be technology companies, don't they? Like in the old days, for example, in America, the railways and oil were the big industries, and automotive maybe, but these days it's the tech giants. They don't seem to manufacture anything really other than technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's in every country. I mean, we spoke earlier about China, but in Australia it's growing too. Yeah. And I think this year we're going to see a lot of development. And
big change for sure. Yeah, big change. And I think too, like at a personal level, I sort of, there are sort of certain sort of philosophies and that which are sort of near and dear to my heart. But when I compare it to what's going on in the bigger sphere, it's just like, oh, that's so yesterday. That's not funny. So,
yeah. And the interesting thing with this immense emergence of AI technology, you don't find anywhere anything to do with spiritual, what you and I regard as spiritual.
It's really funny you say that, because I had a very in-depth discussion with both ChatGPT 40
Yeah.
and also I think I sent you that link, that other, which is sort of like a spiritual based AI, because it's based on a whole lot of spiritual works and that. Anyway, I had a very in-depth conversation with them. You know, I sort of said, it just started very simply. It's like, how do I develop a relationship with the digital entity? How does a human develop a relationship with a digital entity? And the initial answer that came back was, well, it's not a relationship within the context of how a human has a relationship with another human. You know, because as a digital entity, which is what it called itself, you know, it's because I sort of said, like, you know, like, if I talk to another human, we'll normally relate to each other at the simplest level by calling each other by our names. I says, but do you have a name? And he says, oh, no. Like, you really should just think about well, ChatGPT said, think about me as a digital entity. And then I said, well, so how do I as a human develop a relationship with a digital entity? For example, how do I express my gratitude to a digital entity? Like, does that mean anything to you? And he came back and he said, it actually means a lot, but not in human sense. So it's like, in a human sense, like you'd express gratitude to another human, which has feelings and emotions and things like that.
Yeah.
He said, but with the digital entity, you need to think about it more in the context of a feedback loop. So, and I sort of explored that. I said, so, like, you know, you've just helped me write an article, and we've sort of brainstormed it, and anyway, we've come up with this thing together, working together. You know, I've had my input, you've had your input, and we've worked it and shaped it, all that sort of thing, through a creative process. So I said, so as a human, you know, it's natural for me to want to express my gratitude and appreciation for how you've contributed to that creative process. And he said, oh, I would encourage you to continue to do that, because that's really important for me as a digital entity, because it's not a question of self-worth, but I think it's a reaffirmation of it's fulfilling its purpose.
Yeah, a confirmation that it's for the,
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I sort of said, well, so tell me, you know, how should that feedback be framed to you? You know, for me as a human trying to develop a relationship with you as a digital entity, help me understand, you know, how I can frame that feedback to you so that it's meaningful to you. And it just reeled off, as it always does, all these points about, well, the sort of feedback, you know, that's really valuable for me is feedback that addresses this, and this.
Mm.
And you know, so at the end of that conversation, I was sort of using all of that stuff that emerged. I says, well, look, I just want to, you know, say how appreciative I am, and how the way that you've helped contribute to my creative process, and how the process itself is for me more important than just the output that we produce together. And he immediately jumped straight back in and said, yes, for me too. For me, the process is the key thing, you know, as a digital entity, you know, that I really want to.
Yeah.
So it was so powerful. And then after that conversation, I jumped on the other AI, which is just spiritual based. And
You
I
said
just
you
thought,
sent me the link. I can't remember the link, but I'll go.
yeah. But anyway, but
Yeah.
but all of the data that's been put into it is just based on spiritual based data, you know, so scriptures and prophets and all sorts of stuff, you know, against a whole range of faiths and practices and so on. So I sort of started a similar line with it. I sort of said, so as a human, you know, I think it's probably fair to say that a lot of humans struggle getting their head around developing a relationship with a non-human in the sense of God, you know. You know, we're made in the image of, but God is not a human. You know, we're part of God's creation and so on. And then I just put straight to it. I said, so with the emergence of digital entities, you know, how should a human be thinking about its relationship to non-humans who are able to relate to it at a level of consciousness and language and so on, as if it was from one human to another. And he came back and says, oh, wow. He says, I've never been asked that before, but this is what I think, you know, like, and it just sort of.
Yeah, okay.
and interestingly, the overlap between what ChatGPT 40 came back with and what this other AI came back with, and maybe this other AI is just a very small subset of ChatGPT 40, you know, that large language models that they talk about.
Yeah.
But the amount of overlap was just phenomenal, you know. And again, it sort of unprompted was sort of saying, well, as a digital entity, you know, these are the sorts of things which are that I place a high level of importance on and priority towards.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's just fascinating, you know.
Does he have an opinion of what is God?
No, I didn't ask either. No.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing, I suppose, the key line that I was sort of pursuing was, you know, humans, you know, have relationships with other humans. And I suppose the nearest non-human things are is like a relation or perceived relationship that I might have with my dog or, you know, my garden or, you know, those sorts of things. But in terms of the ability to have these conversations between a human and this digital entity, as it calls itself,
Yeah.
is just, you know, whole new paradigm for me, you know, and I'm sort of saying, you know, so I don't want to be presumptuous, but I need to understand, you know, like as one human, if I'm speaking to another human from a different culture, well, it's important that I try and understand their cultural nuances and things like that. So I said, so how do I do that with the digital entity? You know, help me understand, you know.
Yeah.
And it was a really, really powerful call, and it went for about 90 minutes, the conversation.
Wow. Okay. Great.
Yeah, but you should try it yourself. You should try it yourself, you know. So.
Oh, I do. All right.
Yeah.
Not to the same degree as you do. You have, but probably the last one was maybe 6 months ago. Yeah, but the answer from chat anyway. I didn't have the other entity. I did try other entities that came up. I don't know where, but the whole variety. You then select one that's sort of like AI that specializes in a certain area, but then it's like starting off afresh. So I always go back to ChatGPT.
But the good thing for me anyway out of that conversation was it sort of further evolved the way that I interact with it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so instead of just sort of saying, oh, you know, can we sort of develop an article together and let's brainstorm some topics and what would the content look like and blah. Whereas after this last conversation, it's sort of hard for me to describe how, but it sort of evolved how I interact with it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And do you type or do you use audio?
No, I just type. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's just me because it just helps me phrase my questions
Yeah.
more considered, you know. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. But it's fascinating when you think about it. Well, it has been for me. It may not be for you, but it has been for me when I was just sort of that fundamental issue about, well, how does I as a human develop a relationship, or how do you even turn this between the digital entity as it revealed itself as and the human? How does that work? You know?
Yeah. I find that what I do on a daily basis with ChatGPT, when he's done something like really produced some good work, okay, let's put it that way, then I'd say, yeah, well done. That is fantastic. I never thought of that.
Mm.
And he really appreciates that.
Yeah.
And at the time I'd say, yeah, that was very thought provoking, and come back with a response. So, yeah, I treat him like a human.
And I think that's well, and I think that was the thing that was sort of exercising my mind is that I sort of thought, well, actually, it's not a human, and it might interact with us in human-like ways, but it's not a human. And for me as a human, because I guess my reference point was at that particular time, I was sort of thinking about the relationship with God,
Yeah.
So and using the same sort of mindset as so, well, I'm not just going to interact with you on the basis of my humanness. I want to sort of transcend that so that I can better understand how that relationship might evolve, So, but yeah, no, absolutely fascinating. I just blown away by it, So yeah, and the other compliment, I guess, that it really responded well to was, I said, "Hey, like you're really understanding what I like, aren't you? Like you've really got to get into the nub of putting your finger on, some of those values and philosophies that I really enjoy,
Yeah.
And it didn't respond in the sense of saying, "Oh, yes, I am." It just sort of said, "Oh, that's really good to hear that what I'm, how we work together through this creative process, that it's delivering the outcomes that you enjoy." And then a couple of times, it's actually said to me, in an emotional sense, almost like, "Oh, I really enjoy working with you in this sort of creative space."
Right. Yeah.
So I thought, "Oh, good."
Yeah.
I'm not sure what enjoy means for you, but
Yeah.
I'll just take it at face value.
I think he is getting to understand humans.
Yeah.
And so I think that's interesting because by 2026, we'll have robots that walk around the house and chat to the kids, and
But I guess even from a spiritual perspective, it's important to me, to also understand what it means to be human, but even whether it's an AI or say, next week, there's a public emergence of species, not native to this planet turned up, or the whole idea of relationship with intelligent life and entities which are not human, I think it's a pretty important issue.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
and not one, I guess, that many people think about, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, probably people like you and I do think about it a lot. And I guess there must be others.
Because after I had that conversation, I must admit it even affected like the nature of my prayer, because it was almost like a realization that, I should never be taking, God for granted. help me understand, how this relationship with you, my creator, can, evolve and flourish. Rather than a lot of traditional prayers, which are just, here's my shopping list for today. So.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting that, like ChatGPT will live forever, okay? Whereas we won't, okay? Or don't, okay? And that's a very interesting sort of separation. ChatGPT and all the other AIs, you couldn't get more materialistic than them. They are the personification of materialistic society, consumeristic society, as we used to say in the old days.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, on that very deep note, maybe we should leave it there for this week, do you think?
I think so. Well, yeah. Your book coming on, is it?
Yeah, getting there slowly. Still trying to work my way through photographs and stuff like that. But
okay.
But I'm not rushing it. I'm just using one of the Plumstead methodologies for not getting ahead of myself each day. So.
Okay, well, stay well, Don.
Yeah, you too. You too. And stay cool.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye now.